Guess what time it is? Hi,
It's mystery
Linda.
quilt time. Hi, Aubrey.
Hello, hello. Hi, mystery quilters. It's good to see you all again. It's been a minute since we came live every day of the week for the launch, and it's time. It's time to stitch it out, right?
Yes, it is. And I'm ready.
I see that. I see a fun little some letters and numbers and everything on your design
Ah,
wall.
here it is behind me. These are the blocks we're going to do today.
Very exciting.
That I,
And now you know where they go too.
right,
So
right. Well, that's in their instructions. So if they've downloaded, they already know what it is and they know where they go.
perfect. And I have seen at least three
Yep.
people say that this is their very first Hoop Sisters mystery quilt. So that's very exciting. And we're glad that you are along for the ride. And then I saw a lot of people bought it this morning who were like, oh, forget it. I need to do this too, which is fun as well. So hello and welcome, everyone.
There
So,
was also a couple people that posted little sneak peeks. So
yes.
that's fun.
Yes, and people already working on their blocks and all that good stuff. So, very good. All right. So, where are we going to begin today, Linda?
I think I should show a few blocks.
I think you should too. I'm going to make your camera full screen.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, here's the whole quilt. You can see pretty much all of it. You might be missing a corner or two. So we have blocks A1 and then F4, E5, D6, C7. Those are the pieced blocks. So let's start pulling those off. These are the 9-catch blocks. And this is the fall colorway that we had. So there's our 9-catch blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got at least 6 more people saying their first mystery quilt with us too in
Oh,
the
that's
comments.
great. I hope you love it. It's a lot of fun. My husband came in here this morning and he saw all of this up here in the wall. He's like, what is that? I said, that's a mystery quilt. He goes, there's a lot more to this than I thought. I go, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So then we have E1, D2, C3, B4, and A5. These are what we are calling the quilted blocks. So they're just simply your background fabric with quilting on them. So I'll pull those off.
Oh my goodness.
So there we go. So these, it's hard probably for you to see. Maybe I
Yeah.
should bring you closer. Let me bring you closer.
It's more than just a black square.
Yeah, I quilted this one with a contrasting thread. So hopefully you
There
can
you
see
go.
that. Remember we talked about contrasting thread versus a matching thread. Because this was black and I had some beautiful fall colors where I'm at. There we go. I decided to do this in a really pretty contrasting thread.
That is really pretty.
One color of thread on the mystery quilt, so it makes it really easy to pick out thread.
So what do you guys think so far? I'd love to see some comments about it. I'd love to see some hearts. And you
Yeah.
might think you know what it looks like, but you don't have any idea, I promise you.
Not,
Even with all that just was revealed. So very exciting.
not yet. So now I think I'd like to show you. Let me move a couple things. I think, let's see. Let's bring this camera up. So in your download, which Aubrey is going to show you how to download in a little bit when I start to get ready to sew. But in your download, you will find your directions, and you will also find a binder cover. So I do like to put my instructions in a binder when I work on something. So this is my binder cover. And then when I open it up, I've got all my instructions in here. So that's that. And then I also have all my fabrics. We talked about this, I think, the very last day of our 5-day live. This is my week 1 bunch of fabrics that I cut. We're going to stitch 5-piece blocks and 5 quilted blocks. And I have my fabrics. I have my fabrics here. I have almost all of them here. I started some of them in my hoop. So you'll need your wool. This is the piece of wool. I'm going to be doing the 6-inch block. So this is my wool for my 6-inch. And just refer to your fabric and thread key for the size to cut for either the 6 or the 8. You will need 1 piece of fabric. This is your background fabric. So as you can see, I'm not going to be doing the black one. I'll be doing the spring colorway. This is what the cute little block will look like. See,
So,
there's
pretty.
one quilting. And then you will also need some squares of fabric for the piece block. And this is going to be different than what we've ever done before. You'll need some wool that are cut into these little strips. Again, refer to your fabric and thread key for the size to cut. And we did press all the edges of our wool. Wool is optional, of course. You don't have to do it. But if you're going to do it, you want to get it all prepped and ready to go. And I would like to read to you what's in the very first part of the 9-patch instructions, because it will give you a little bit of clue as to what's happening here. So this year, our mystery quilt will include 4 traditional quilt blocks. Each block is pieced into columns. That's why we have this. That's a column. Each column includes the quilting because all of our quilting patterns include the quilting right on it. After each column is stitched and trimmed, they are then joined together to form the block. So you can see the seams on the back right here. This week we will stitch the classic 9-patch block. As you can see by the diagram to the right, there's just one file. So this particular block has just one file, but then each fabrics will go in different locations. So we need to stitch 15 of this one file, but the fabrics will go in different locations. So as you go through your instructions, you will find this one is stitch 2 per block, stitch 2 for each block needed, but we're going to stitch 10 for the mystery quilt because we will need 5 of these blocks. I always write down what my fabric colors are. Like here I wrote blue, white, blue. So I know I have to make 10 of these with this fabric location. So if you have a large enough hoop, you can go ahead and do as many as you can in one hoop and do all these fabrics at once. And then I also go and write in my instructions what fabric to use when. It's just so that I don't have to think, okay, which one's fabric 1, which one's fabric 2, etc. And then at the end, when we do the quilting, I write what color thread I'm using. This quilt's easy because it's just one color. And then we have our trimming instructions. And then our second block, so what I just explained here is this column. Now we do this column with these colors. So it's the same process. We just put the fabrics in a different location. And again, I write my colors down so I don't get confused. And this one I need to do 5. Same color thread. And then it tells us how to cut it. So that's kind of a run through of what we're going to do. And I'd like to go ahead and stitch the blocks.
All right. Well, you're getting set up for that. You want me to walk them through
The download?
Yep. Are you ready for that?
Yep, go for it. I'll move my cameras.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see this. And all you're going to want to do to access your files, I wanted to cover this because it is inevitably the most asked question in week 1. And the steps that I'm about to show you, you're actually going to do every single week to access the next week's set of files. So I'm at hoopsisters.com. And what I'm going to do is just go back to my original order of mystery quilts. So there's a little person icon over on the top right of the screen in that teal bar, and you're going to want to click sign in, okay? You've already have an account because you ordered the mystery quilt. So you're going to click sign in. Your username and password will be typed in there on the next screen. And then the beautiful thing about it is once I sign in, it takes me right to my order history. Now, if you've ordered something after Mystery Quilt, you might have to scroll down. Your newest orders will always be at the top, and your older orders will be further down. And if you're like me, you have pages and pages. So you might have to click next to see your full order history. But to access your mystery quilt files, you're going to want to click on the order number associated with your mystery quilt order. Mine is right here at the top, so I'm going to click on my order number. Now, once I get here, you can see I actually had the bonus in mine too, which is down below. But my 2024 Mystery Quilt Divine Divide is right here. And what you're going to see is this black box with the white down arrow. And you're going to click right on that box. Think download when you see that. And then usually, if you get to this screen, you just have one more step and you'll see all of the files associated with this particular product in here right now. And so the fabric and thread key's been in there. So have the prep cover sheets, even the what to expect document. But this morning we added the week 1 zipped files. So the next thing you're going to do is just click on that and it'll begin downloading to your computer. And then next week we'll have week 2, week after that, week 3, and it keeps going like that. So hopefully that will help show you. Sometimes it's just easier to see. We did send out an email with instructions as well and a video. So you can always check that. We sent that just to the mystery quilters. So if you ordered it, you will receive that. But hopefully that will help with any questions about how to access your files. All right, Linda, I'm going to pull your machine up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
There you go.
Okay, so again, this is what we're stitching. So we're going to stitch a column. I'm going to stitch this column right here. So this column is actually on this particular block 2 times. And this is the exact same file in the middle, but your fabrics are just in a different location. I've already stitched this column and this column, so I just need to repeat this one, so I will show you that. And I've got my wool and my fabric here. The other things you'll need is your quilting thread. This is going to be my white quilting thread. In my bobbin, I have a regular pre-wound embroidery bobbin inside the machine. And then we also need our wash-away thread. So those are the threads that we need. And I'm going to use a Frixon pen, and I'm just going to write on my battleizer just while I do this, just so you can see, hopefully understand what I'm doing. So the first step, I have to rethread my machine, is to take water-soluble thread in your needle, and we're going to stitch the placement stitch. Now I have white thread, it's water-soluble, so it's very hard to see, but I am stitching a placement stitch that is the same size as my little column of optional wool. And the water soluble is only in the needle. It is not in the bobbin. The bobbin is your regular embroidery bobbin thread. So hopefully you can, it's very hard to see. I forgot to change colors. This is my stitching right here, and then it actually has divisions right here. So if you are going to add the wool, you'll place that next and stitch. If you're not adding the wool, you'll just go ahead and forward it to the next step. So this is step 2, where it's going to go ahead and stitch down my wool. I'm going to stop this midstream. If you have the ability to raise the height of your embroidery presser foot on your machine, we recommend that you do that, because at this point it's going to stitch down and it's going to stitch across the wool. And it just kind of helps your foot from getting caught inside that puffy wool. If you're not using wool, you don't have to worry about it. So Here's what our little block looks like. It just has the 3 little squares. The next step, continuing with my water-soluble thread, is to place this fabric. This is fabric 1, my background fabric. I wrote a number 1 on it, right over the center, making sure it's equal on both sides and making sure I have enough fabric top and bottom to completely cover the center of that little square. And I'm continuing with the same thread, and we will stitch what we call a placement stitch. So it's going to, or a tack down, this is going to tack it down for us. So up until this point, I've been using water-soluble thread. So now we recommend that, well, now you have to take out your water-soluble thread and put in a neutral thread. So that could be something that'll kind of blend with all your fabrics. In this case, I'm going to continue with the white. And I also want to trim the very top and the very bottom of that block. I'm just leaving a very scant 1/4 inch with my little hoop scissors mini. Then we'll take our fabric 2 squares. I wrote a 2 on here just so you can kind of tell what I'm doing. So this is fabric 1, this is 2. 2 is going to go right sides to fabric 1, keeping your raw edges even. And again, I have a neutral thread in my needle. And we'll let it stitch a seam. Then we're going to flip this one up and out of the way. See if I can get my camera a little better angle. I flip this fabric up and out of the way. This fabric 2, we're going to put it right side to fabric 1 again at the bottom, keeping my raw edges even. Let it stitch a seam. Bad thing about moving a camera is you always have to move it back. So then to flip this one down and out of the way, and then it's going to tap everything down because right now this is loose and this one is loose. So my job is to not pull it, but smooth it out nice and smooth, making sure I don't have any tucks right here at the seam, and it's going to stitch a tack down. And if you can slow your machine down for this, that's a good idea because you're kind of manipulating fabric as you go. I'm going to smooth this one down. So that's all the piecing we need to do on this one. And if you're doing the other block, it's just a matter of a different fabric in a different location. So the next and last step on this one is the quilting. So you would put your quilting thread in. Mine's going to be white. And I'm going to pick the speed up. We don't need to go slow here. And we'll let it stitch the quilting. that one's done. These stitch out really, really fast. So the next block, look at the quilting on there. It shows up very nicely. This is our quilted block, and it's the same quilting that's on the 9 patch. It's just one solid piece of fabric with quilting. So that's the next one we're going to stitch. And I think that I will change out my thread real quick for you so you can see. I forgot to do that earlier. So we won't have white on white on white. So this will stitch the placement stitch. See, we're getting some love on the quilted blocks. I love them too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my placement stitch for the wool, should I choose to use it. So I would place the wool there. If I'm not going to use it, you would just place your fabric over it. But I'm going to go ahead and use it, and I will continue with the water soluble. Even though I'm using a darker colored thread here, you should continue with the water soluble. And the reason being is obviously if I'm going to put a white fabric on here, I don't want a darker color to show through. So generally the first 3 steps of all of our designs are done with water soluble thread for the most part.
Linda, we're getting a lot of questions about what size hoop you're using. I know you're doing the 6-inch block size, but they want to know about your hoop.
Well, the hoop is going to depend on your machine. I happen to have a large hoop with this machine, so I'm able to do multiple blocks at one time. If you don't have a large hoop, you'll just do one at a time. But this one has a very large hoop, so I take advantage of it. I use less spatulizer, less stabilizer, less time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I will continue with the water soluble thread. I'm not going to change this out because I'm not actually going to use this block. So I'll do the dark so you can see where it is. It's going to tap down my fabric. My fabric is right side up. And you can hopefully notice I'm keeping my fabric nice and smooth. I try to stay ahead of the needle. Just keep any little puckers or folds from being clean. Paula's asking, does the quilting use the same thread in the entire quilt? Yes, Paula, one color of thread. So next or last step is the quilting step in the 9-patch block. So I'm changing my thread back to my white quilting thread. Remember in the sample I showed you before, I actually had a contrasting quilting thread, so that's an option as well. So maybe, Aubrey, this has about 6 minutes. Maybe I should answer some questions that you start.
Yes.
Okay. So Judy says.
Also, Linda, when the machine's going, it's a little hard to hear you. I don't know how close you can get to your mic.
I do have earbuds on. Is that any better or not?
That's better, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me do it over here then. So Judy wants to know if we should try to stitch along with or watch and do later. I think it would be difficult to stitch along with. I think you might miss some things. Because of course by the miracle of modern technology, we do some things ahead. So I think possibly you should probably watch and then maybe have it going again when you're actually stitching if you have any questions. And Kathy says she loves the contrasting thread in the quilting. It is pretty. This white one is also pretty. And it depends on your fabric. I thought with the black, it needed the contrast for sure. Janice wants to know if that's Quilter's Dream Puff. Yes, I'm right now using the puff, but the wool is also very nice to use. The puff is polyester. Robin says, do you press the cotton poly batting? Absolutely. I press the edges of any batting I'm going to be putting under my needle, especially if it has a lot of poof to it, because I don't want my foot to get caught in it. Patricia says it's going to take her a while to determine which of the colored fabrics are going to fit with fabrics 2, 3, and 4. Oh yeah, that's the fun part of a mystery. Chris is having difficulty with her vanished light thread breaking. I'm wondering how old it is, Chris, and what type of weather you have by you. If it's been dry, it might be brittle. If it's older, it might be brittle. I use mine so often that I don't have to worry about keeping it stored in a baggie. A lot of people will keep it stored in like a little Ziploc type bags to keep the air from getting to it and drying it out. You could also slow the machine down, well, since you've already done that. So I actually know a couple people that they prefer not the light, but the regular vanish wash away thread. So it's a little bit heavier. It just depends on your machine. So Cheryl says, are the blocks sewn together before you do the embroidery? No, they're sewn together after. So we're going to show you that. Jeannie wants to know if you can place the wool and the fabric at the same time so the foot doesn't get caught. Oh, Jeannie, I don't think I could do that. I'm not that talented. You could try it. I think I want to see where the wool is going. And we have you cut it the exact size of the placement stitch. So if you put fabric over the top of it, you may not see where it's going. Brenda wants to know how I hooped my battleizer. Well, most hoops you're going to have to loosen the screw on it a significant amount so that you can put your battleizer over the hoop and get your inner ring in there easily without struggling. You shouldn't have to struggle at all if your screw hoop is loose enough. Then once you get your inner ring in there, you can tighten it up your screw, and then you'll have proper tension. After that, you'll be able to pop it out and rehoop it without a lot of messing around with it. Gail asked, did I change to regular thread after tacking the middle back block? You should, Gail. I had regular thread. I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna tell you I was fibbing to you. I was supposed to use water soluble thread, steps 1, 2, and 3, but to save time, I just had my white embroidery thread because this block will not be used in the actual quilt. This is just a sample block. So water soluble thread for steps 1, 2, and 3, and then when I tacked that middle square fabric, that was also water soluble. Then I need to change back to a neutral thread. Karen wants to know cotton batting would work in place of wool. I've never used that, Karen. You could give it a sample, give it a try, and see what you think. So Rianne says, what size is that fabric? All our cuts were 3 by 3. So at the top of the fabric and thread key for the cutting chart for the size you're doing, Rianne, at the very, very top, it says from fabric 1, cut squares. So it's going to depend on what size square you're cutting, but it'll tell you that way at the very, very top. So maybe you just missed that part. And Elaine wants to know what type of thread I'm using for the quilting. I am using a Robeson Anton polyester embroidery thread. Okay, my blocks are done. So I got to do a little switching around here, Aubrey, if you want to do a song and dance again.
Can I show them what's in their files?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. I'm going to show you guys what's in your files because I don't sing and dance. So this is the best I got. So we did show you how to access your weekly files. If you jumped on a little bit later, no worries. You can always rewind this after the live is over. But here's what's in your download. So inside, you're going to have the 969. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Nine patch.
Go back one.
Oh, I'm on the wrong slide.
Yeah,
there we go.
There we go. That's what's in your download.
So that's what you will see when you download it. And you obviously, there's the 6-inch files, the 8-inch files, your binder covers in there, and your instructions are in there as well. And then once you click within there, you'll see all the different formats in that particular size that you're using. So you would just go to the format that you need, open that up, and you will have your files. So I'm going to go back one more screen and just point out again that you will want that 9-patch instructions PDF. You can print that and you'll have a lot of the information that we're going over today in there. Plus that fabric and thread key is in your download as well. So I did see some questions on fabric and thread key information. So you can always check that out as well. And then I'm also going to pop up Nina's information at the bottom of the screen. If you guys have specific questions that we might not have gotten answered here today, you can always reach out to us directly and we will get you taken care of there as well. All right, Linda, I've got your map on the screen.
All righty, here we go. So this, I just unhooped my battleizer and I'm just going to roughly cut apart all of my little sections. So I have a little bit smaller piece to work with. If you're into Frankenbat, which I am, you could save all these extra pieces. I'm not usually this wasteful with battleizer, but I needed to just show you guys. I usually use every single inch of it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about trimming your blocks. So in your instructions, on page 4, these are the blocks that we stitched first. So these are the ones we need to have 10 of. And what we need to do is label them. So I'm going to be doing the A block. This is going to be A1. So I'm going to put A1 at the very top within my seam allowance. So you can see I have it really close with, which by the time I trim it, it'll be within my seam allowance. And on your instructions, it'll actually show you A1, A1, C7, C7. So you want to label all your blocks. And then these red areas here, this is where we're going to trim the block, leaving battleizer within the seam allowance, wherever you see the red areas. So this one will have it at the bottom here, on the right side here. This is all of it. It gets trimmed all the way around, not leaving extra battleizer. And these blocks you'll label whatever is in your instructions. This is for your placement, so you know where the blocks go when you're finished. So for A1, we'll do this one first. It wants me to leave my battleizer up here at the top. So I'm going to use my trimmer by George with the metal side facing up. The crimped metal edge is facing up. I'm going to use the 1/4 inch line, line it up with my outside placement stitch, and completely remove my battleizer and my fabric. Then also A1, I need to do the same thing on this side. The reason we're doing that is because that's where the batting will go, or not the batting, the binding. So my binding will go on this edge right here. Then these two edges get joined to other blocks. So this is where we'll use the crimped metal edge. It's got a little crimped metal edge. And we place that with the metal edge facing down. Put it right up to the fabric. Give it a little bit of a shimmy to get that metal edge right next to the basting stitch. Fold it down. Make sure I have no fabric coming out right here. And then we need to use a 16mm rotary cutter, and we run that blade right along that metal edge, completely removing the battleizer from your seam allowance. I'll do the very same thing at the bottom of this one. So now I've got a nicely trimmed edge here, but these edges are looking a little rough. This is where I completely removed the battleizer from the seam allowance. Now I want to trim this down to a 1/4 inch. So again, I will turn my trimmer upside down, line up my 1/4 inch with my battleizer edge, and give that a trim. So that's one of my A1s. The second A1, the instructions show to just leave the battleizer and the seam allowance at the very top. So that's what I'll do. Line up my 1/4 inch with my basting line. So that's the very top. All the rest of the edges get trimmed with the battleizer removed from the seam allowance. I have to use my crimped metal edge. So by removing all of this battleizer, we get way less bulk in our seams when we sew our little columns together. So all my battleizer is removed, or I need it to be removed. This again is my edge for my binding. And on the back side, I like to flip it over and trim it a 1/4 inch from the back side because I can see better. So these are my two A1s. This one is also going to be an A1. And again, if you're stitching all of these 10 different files, if you're stitching them all at one time, you can go ahead and get them all trimmed, get them all marked. It's actually very easy to follow. So for the second, the one I have to stitch 5 of, this one I have to stitch 5 of, I'm going to go ahead and flip through to that trimming. And here's the A1 for that one. So here's A1. So I need to leave my battleizer at the top edge, which would be right here. And I got to mark this one A1. Then the rest of the sides, 3 sides that are left, we will use the trimmer to remove the battleizer from the seam allowance. Then I flip it over and I'm going to trim the front, the fabric only, leaving a 1/4 inch from the battleizer edge. So there's my A1. Just do something real quick. So here's the A1 that I kept the battleizer on the side and the top. And here's the A1. The battleizer has to be kept at the top. And then here's the one that it's trimmed. It's also just at the top. So those are my 3 columns. I'm going to set those aside. We'll go ahead and trim our quilted block. We'll show you how to stitch those columns together in just a minute. But since I'm trimming, I'm going to go ahead and trim the quilted block. And the same thing applies here in your instructions. This is actually page 11. By the way, there's a QR code on how to use the trimmer in case you forget or just want to review it. But these are marked. This one's A5, E1, and you can see where I must leave my battleizer within the seam allowance because that's where my binding will be. And then there's a few blocks that I trim all 4 sides. So this one I'm going to go ahead and do the A5, which the battleizer will be left in the seam allowance on this side. I always mark my blocks. That one says A5. I'm going to trim this edge, leaving the fabric within the seam allowance. And then the other 3 edges, I'll trim, removing the battleizer from the seam allowance.
Linda, Chris is asking if you ever have any trouble with that pen marking returning after the iron, after it's ironed to remove it. I'm assuming not, or you wouldn't put it on that white, right?
Well, I'm not going to use these blocks in my quilt, and I normally mark it in the seam allowance.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the only time I have had trouble, I've had trouble on dark colors like reds and really dark colors, but it does come off with the iron, and that's what I was doing a second ago. I was see hopefully that little bit of blue there. I did hit it with my little iron I've got set up over here. It doesn't seem to bother my whites.
Interesting.
But I would check a sample or use a different pen. Yeah, so you got to be careful with those Frixon pens. They're great on most fabrics, but there's a few, like I said, the dark colors. It leaves like a white, almost it looks like a white chalk line, but it doesn't like to come out. So you don't want to mark that on the front of it. Okay, so here's my A5 block. I did leave battleizer right here because that's where my binding will be. So look at that pretty quilting.
It's really pretty.
Any questions we need to answer? Because I'm ready to sew these together.
I think you can go ahead. I think Nina's answered what I see. I did see a very specific question about the fabric and thread key questioning something, which we're not going to get into. So go ahead and email Nina and we'll look at that. Yeah, Chris just said that used before, removed, then it came back. So be careful.
Yeah, it does happen. But
yeah,
I'm doing this for you guys. I'm not going to use this block because kindly stitched all mine for me, so I don't have to worry about it. But I do, if you are using it, I always put it within the seam allowance because then it doesn't matter if it doesn't go away. Okay, so now we're ready to sew these 3 together. So we'll start by putting them in the proper order, of course. Right sides together. I'm going to stitch the seam first. And just like we do all of our other blocks, trying to find the camera, there we go. We're going to put a pin so that it comes out exactly on the basting stitch line. And I'm trying to watch my camera as well as watch what I'm doing, and it's not working very well. There we go. So it's coming out right on that basting line. And then we'll come across to this block and put it in the same basting line. So I've got a pin going straight across. Give it a nice pinch. Pinch it really good. Take a second pin and put it in and take out the first pin. So we'll repeat that on the corner. Give it a pinch. Put in a second pin, take out the first. So any match points. So obviously on this block, it'll be every seam. There's 2 seams in the middle of the block and then also the end. So I'll put that pin right there on the basting stitch. Come across to the second one. Give it a pinch. Put the second pin in, take the first out. The last step is the corner. So this is pinned and ready to stitch. So I'm going to take it over to my machine and I'll be right back.
Chris says, after seeing today's video, I may change my fabric. Uh-oh. What color thread did she use on the 9 patch with the fall colors? Oh, I'm not sure. We'll have to ask her that. Let's see. You can try a cotton thread, Cheryl. We recommend and prefer a polyester embroidery thread. Seems to work best for us. And Sue says that she's going to be missing the live at week 4 and 5, and she knows she can catch the replay. And if you do have questions, Sue, you can always get a hold of us after watching.
I have an opinion on the cotton thread.
Oh, okay, go for it. Your opinion is valuable.
Well, if your machine likes it and you like the look, do it. As long as this is what we call a triple run line stitching, meaning the stitch is going to go forward, backward, forward, forward, backward, forward. So your cotton thread, you don't want it to be real thick because it already is thick because of the stitching. But if like an Aurifil or something like that, if you prefer the look of an actual machine quilted quilt versus an embroidery design, I think it'd be pretty.
There you have
Okay,
it.
so look how that matched up.
Beautiful.
And do you see that little bit of stitching right there?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be water soluble thread. So I think I'm going to not worry about that showing, because if you use water soluble thread, you can just toss this in the wash and it's gone. So next we'll sew this one. This will be exactly the same way. And somebody asked what color thread I used, right?
Yeah, in the one behind you.
Yes, I used, let me grab something. I don't have the spool handy, but I do have the thread. This was the fabric that I matched. This really pretty rusty red color. That's what I matched my thread to.
Rusty red is the answer, right?
Rusty red. Go in your stash. You probably got one. And I will say, I think I brought this up at our week-long live. If you're doing the 8-inch blocks, I did go into, I'm using Robeson Antam, which has 1,100 yards. I went into a second spool of thread.
Oh, okay.
I didn't use the whole second spool of thread, but one wasn't enough because we get that question a lot, how much thread?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have that pinned. I'll go stitch it. I'll be right back.
I keep seeing a lot of people saying that they think variegated thread would be really pretty with this.
It would.
But the pedal to the metal over there. Ellen's asking, she said the white in the 9 patch is the same as the white in the single quilted block, and that is also called background fabric, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
But again, it's your quilt. If you want to, in the background, the ones that are quilted, if you want to do a different color thread there, that'd be kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's my little block all sewn together. Everything matches up pretty good. I'm happy with that.
So cute.
So the last thing we have to do with this is press it. So I wanted to point out in the directions. It does tell you which way to press each block's seams so that when you sew them all together, they will oppose each other. So these blocks all get pressed, the seams all get pressed to the inside.
That
Or
is the
they get,
cutest little iron.
you like my cute little iron?
So cute.
Matches my quilt blocks, which was completely by accident. So I do like to use the strip stick, and these seams are going to be pressed toward the center, this direction. So I give it a press first. Put my seam directly over my little stick. And this way I don't flatten out my quilt block. Pressing them toward the center. And a little squirt of, I'm using Mary Ellen's Best Press, and I do like these little mister bottles. It keeps it from squirting out on your fabric and leaving a big blob.
I also really like that your reveal sample is done in the darker colorway, and the sample that you're showing how to do it is in that lighter colorway.
Yeah, because this is the 5-inch, and the bigger, the reveal one is actually the 8-inch. So I did notice in pressing my block, my iron hit my marks of A1 here. I have it on one of the blocks, so I'm happy with that. But make sure when you're done, if it did remove your lettering, to please remark that, because you'll be lost at the end when you try to put it together if you don't know where everything goes.
Good tip.
Okay. I think we're good, Aubrey.
I also love that your instructions are so thorough. I love that it shows you exactly how to use the trimmer, how to press the seams. I think it's great.
Good, good.
All right.
You'll make one.
Not yet. That's funny. Nina put super tip. It's important to label your blocks or you'll be lost by week 5. So true. Okay. Well, can we see the back of the 9-inch she just pressed? Did you just
The
get rid of
back
your
of this.
camera? Maybe you can hold it up.
There we go.
There you go.
So my seams are pressed in.
Yep.
And I did make sure you mark your block. And you want to mark your block at the top of it, because it's important.
Right. So you don't turn it as you go.
Exactly.
And Chris also says you have the best instructions, so good job.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Well, I don't know if you want to look through those I don't know if I've started anything new. I don't think I did. But we would love it if you would post pictures along the way in our VIP Facebook group. And that way we can see your fabrics coming together, your blocks coming together, and all that good stuff too. And so you've got, I don't know, some blocks to work on this week. And then next week, same time, same place, we're going to have week 2 reveal. And she's going to take more numbers and letters off of there. I did see Maureen asked what kind of pen you were using.
I'm using a Frixon pen. Where's my camera? There it is. A little Frixon pen. But again, you need to use whatever works with your fabric, and you probably want to test this on your fabric. It does come off with an iron, but certain colors of fabrics, it'll leave a white mark. For example, well, obviously it wouldn't show on my black, but I put it on reds. It shows up great, but when you iron it, it leaves like a white line. So you might want to use a different marker depending on the fabrics you're using.
All right.
And I see a question about the backing. Is edge-to-edge files used on top of the backing fabric, or is the back quilting block you did not needed? So we're talking apples and oranges, I think. This quilting comes with a quilt block. You're going to go ahead and use it. And then when we get to week 5, we're going to talk about optional quilting of the back of the quilt. Hope that makes sense. So this has nothing to do with the back. And neither does this one. This has nothing to do with the back. The edge-to-edge files for the back they go with this. They're designed to kind of mimic this, but they're not the same files.
And you don't get them till week 5.
That's right, because we're mean that way.
All right. Okay, I think we did it. Week 1 revealed, taught them how to do it, and now you just have to go do it. So go get busy stitching things out. And if we missed your question or you have additional questions, our customer service number is at the bottom. So you can feel free to call or email Nina and we will help you to the best of our ability. And other than that, week 1, check.
Done.
Done. All right, we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.